Welcome to the Brand and Market Podcast, where branding clarity meets marketing strategy. I'm your host, Allie Haney, founder of Brand and Market, a boutique agency dedicated to helping small businesses craft intentional brands and effective marketing plans. Each week, I share practical tips and insights to help you, especially those of you in real estate-related industries, build a standout brand to attract your brand's biggest fans. Let's dive in. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Brand and Market Podcast. I'm Allie Haney, your host, and today I have Matt Sanderson, who is one of the co-founders of an incredibly cool and useful app. It is strIQ, otherwise known as strIQ, and Matt is a commercial real estate agent, an investor, and now an app-based founder. So without further ado, actually, let me back up for a second, and I'm going to introduce you how I actually met Matt the first time, because level up your listing has been a topic of conversation on this podcast in the past and all over my socials too. So I met Matt and his lovely wife, Amanda, as well as their right-hand gal, Lauren, at the Level Up Your Listing Summit in March. And it was so cool to see a real-time application of the app, which we'll get into in a little bit more. But he was so gracious with his time and going through optimizing two of our properties right there on the spot. So it immediately grabbed my attention, not only the usefulness of the app, but also just the kindness of Matt, Amanda, and Lauren. So sorry to back us up there, but had to preface that with just the kindness that really attracted me to the co-founders, his wife, and everything before we get too far in. But now I'm going to pass it over to Matt to tell us a little bit more about his background in commercial investing and as a co-founder of a really cool app.
Awesome. Well, Allie, thank you for having me. Just real quick, at Level Up Your Listing, first of all, amazing conference if anyone wants to go. I know they're already planning that for next year. So would love to see you there.
I already bought my ticket.
I know. I need to go ahead and lock in our sponsorship because, that's like one of my favorite conferences ever. Natalie and Tatiana and that crew do an incredible job. But by the way, the property you showed me is incredible. And I remember it had so much potential when we were looking at it through the data. But I remember it had a little bit of an interesting situation with some of the neighbors. And so anyway, if you're a short-term rental investor, host, you probably know when you've got those pesky neighbors out there, it's just tough. And you've got difficult neighbors that might be keeping you from your full potential. And that's what it sounds like.
Indeed. Yeah, there are multiple podcast episodes about that Kentucky property. So our listeners are well aware. It's no secret.
Yeah, it had so much potential, but the neighbors are giving you a hard time. So
I know you're like, you should add a hot tub. I'm like, that sounds great, but I don't know that that's going to happen.
It's going to happen. So anyway, well, yeah, thank you for having me on. Just a little background on me, and then we can get into it. So yeah, I've been in real estate for about 11 years. Straight out of college, just went into commercial real estate brokerage, representing companies kind of all over the country, mostly doing office and industrial leasing and buying of properties kind of throughout the US. And what I realized during that whole process is, they come to me to go find these properties so they can buy them for their businesses or as individuals. And I started looking around my office and I was like, why are we not buying properties? All these people are coming to us and they're like, I don't know, why are we not? And so that started my journey of saying, hey, we're the experts. They're coming to us. Why don't we start buying these properties? But what I realized, and maybe a lot of your listeners are probably thinking this today, well, commercial properties, are $1 million or $10 million or $50 million. And so capital, there's knowledge is a definite barrier of entry, but capital is usually the biggest barrier of entry. So what happened back in 2020, I said, well, I don't want this to be a barrier of entry to me. And so if I can't afford a $10 million piece of property, what can I afford? And I could afford a $400,000 house in Fredericksburg, Texas. And that's how I stumbled into Airbnb short-term rental investing. And kind of the long story short on that, and we'll get into it more in a minute, it was a 60% cash on cash return, was cash flowing $2,000 a month. It was an incredible deal. And it was really what opened my eyes to the amazing industry of what short-term rentals are. And now I've gone all in, created a technology company called strIQ or strIQ, which is basically the Zillow for Airbnb investors, because the pain that I dealt with finding these dang properties, I wanted to create a solution for that so that it can make it not only easier for me, but also for your listeners and everyone else out there that is aspiring to buy properties. So that's kind of my background and story.
Wow, I didn't know that you were a commercial real estate agent from the jump right outside of the gate from college.
Day one.
Day one. That's amazing.
It's been almost 12 years.
A little known fact about me, I actually got my real estate license while we were in Kentucky to attempt to sell that property in Kentucky. Cutting my teeth on a $1.5 million property was, unsuccessful. So
Hey, real estate fees on these large properties can be pretty hefty. So I can see why you might have done that.
we were trying to avoid it. Like most of our listeners know now, that property still runs as a short-term rental, and it's pretty successful. We just had Derby weekend, so that's a big time deal in Louisville, Kentucky. So May is a pretty good month for us down there in the Bluegrass State. Okay, like you already mentioned, you already touched on the fact that you had the house in Fredericksburg, Texas. That's the Aggie house, right?
So no, that one is my most recent one in College Station.
Okay.
So I've got 4 short-term rentals. Fredericksburg was my first one back in 2020, and we've bought one almost every year since. And College Station was the last one we just bought.
Okay, very cool. So you said you have 4 total?
4 total, yeah.
And are they all in Texas?
So we've got one in Fredericksburg, we've got one in College Station, and then Canyon Lake. Those are the Texas properties. And then we have one on 30A in Seaside, Florida.
Oh, fun. Do you guys get to utilize that at all?
Oh, yeah. I mean, depending on the listeners and the investor situation, usually I like to ask these questions when I'm talking to people. I'm like, hey, when you're buying a short-term rental, there's probably 4 reasons why. Either cash flow, wealth building, which is appreciation of the property or debt pay down, tax advantages, or you want to use it and build some really fun experiences with your family and friends and all that stuff. But when I got into this, for sure, wealth building and cash flow was like a major priority. I didn't really learn about the tax thing until, just a few years ago. But family experiences were a major reason why I wanted to buy these, because I'm like, where else can you buy these incredible investments and then go have fun and build these cool experiences, going to the beach with your family or hanging out in the hot tub? Like, you can't do that with stocks. You can't do that with commercial real estate. And so for me, I wanted to build and buy a portfolio of assets that not only make money, but I can literally go all over the country with my family and build fun experiences. So that's a major reason for it. Honestly, is why I think a lot more people should get into this asset type.
I don't know that you know the story of our first short-term rental, but I'll share the Reader's Digest version with you. Both of the short-term rentals that we owned, we did not initially purchase them to become short-term rentals. The first one was our primary home. We then moved due to military orders. It was a long-term rental, had terrible long-term renters, and last-ditch effort to keep that property, we converted into a short-term rental, and it was banging. And then we ended up selling that so that we could put all of that money towards the Kentucky property. You guys know that story already. It was originally purchased to be a wedding venue that didn't pan out, so we converted that into a short-term rental as well. And I think the part about strIQ is that really like attracted me to it was that it's so data driven that even if it's not your first, like I'm looking for the next property to buy to build a portfolio, but then I wasn't. But then I could have still used strIQ had I known that it existed back when, we were trying to determine what we were going to do with Kentucky. And so when you did the live tutorial of how to optimize that property, I was like, wow, this can be beneficial for anyone at any part of their journey in acquiring short-term rentals, regardless of whether they don't have any yet or whether they have 20 of them. With that being said, let's dive into a little bit more specifically about the app. I would love for you to explain it to me like I am a five-year-old.
Yeah. No, I was thinking about that today because we really have 2 different products. The first one is more of an acquisition product when someone's trying to go find and acquire a profitable short-term rental. The other one is the product where it helps someone optimize that short-term rental. So, there's a lot of revenue companies out there that help show you your average revenue, which is good. It's a good reference point, but it doesn't really help you really understand how to get to that top 75th or the 90th or even top 1% of that market, which a lot of your listeners and professionals out there know how to do it with the right branding and design, right? We'll get into that here in a minute. But the first thing which is really the genesis of why we got created in the first place, was the acquisition part of the app. Because the major pain point I was experiencing, and I'm sure you dealt with this too, was when you want to go buy these properties and go build that wealth and have the tax write-offs and all that stuff, where do you go? You go to Zillow or you go to an MLS, then you go to a revenue provider of choice, and there's a few out there. And then you go to your underwriting, which is usually on a spreadsheet, Excel spreadsheet, and you do one at a time, and you see what the cash on cash return or the profitability looks like of those. First of all, it's kind of painful, it's really painful after a while, because after you keep finding negative properties, it gets a little disheartening. So I would do this hours and hours and hours, and spending time away from my family, finding negative 20% cash on cash returns. And I just was like, man, and I was talking to my co-founders about this. I was like, what if we just brought all this, data is such a big part of everything today. I'm like, what if we just brought all this stuff together and helped customers just visually see this in seconds, to where essentially you've got the MLS, you've got revenue, and you have underwriting all in one. And literally all you have to do is get on the app, filter for, I want to find anything above 10% cash on cash return, anything that makes over $75,000 in revenue, under $750,000 purchase price, that has 2 bedrooms or more. And you just put it in your filters like you would in Zillow, but it shoots out only the profitable properties that make sense, and it helps you discover the needles in the haystack. Another way to look at it is, if you're trying to research something on Google, back in the old day before Google was here, you would have to probably go find books or go talk to people and research to find it. Well, fast forward to where we are today, we have Google, where you can literally Google anything, or you've got AI that will literally scrub everything for you and then deliver it on a platter for you. So in the same way, strIQ or strIQ is gathering all this data that would be so difficult and time consuming to find, and delivering it to you on a golden platter, essentially.
First thing I want to say, and it's a compliment to the design of strIQ, and I don't know much about what it takes to go in and create a whole app. So first, I just want to say I'm in awe of that. But second, it's like almost user behavior, user experience, like because people are already familiar with like Zillow, Realtor, Redfin, all of those things. It's a very easy transition over to the strIQ app in terms of usability. But then the other thing that I wanted to point out, and as a user of the strIQ app, when he says it helps you look for the needle in the haystack, he is underselling that point by far, because literally it's color coded. It's like the red ones, thumbs down, yellow ones, and then green ones, go for it. So like it is very user friendly.
Well, and what's cool about it is, I bought 2 properties that I found on the app. So, I was like, well, I've got to speak my own language here. If I'm going to build this product, I probably need to buy some properties that I find on the app. So sure enough, going back to College Station, that's how I found the property in College Station. I'm not an ad.
You found College Station on strIQ?
Yeah, we had literally just launched. Yeah, so Fredericksburg and Seaside, I had bought those 2, and those were the properties that helped me realize, first of all, the opportunity that's out there, but then 2, how painful that dang process is to find those properties. So they're really the reason why me and my team got together to go create this product, to help other people make it easier for them. So then in 2023, when we launched, I think it was October or November 2023. And my wife and I were like, man, we wanted to buy a property this year. We need some tax write-offs, but we kind of feel hopeless because there are only 2 months of the year left. So my wife and I were sitting on the couch, and I was like, hey, why don't we just pull up the app we just built and just see what we can find? And sure enough, we did. We were looking in College Station because she's an Aggie and she went to school there. And I had heard someone talking about college markets, and I was like, oh, let's just give it a go. So I'll just help people kind of visually see what we're doing. So I clicked on the COC button, the cash on cash button, which color coordinates every single property. I put in a filter of anything that made over 100 grand in revenue and anything that was above 20% cash on cash return. And there were like 4 properties total out of 1,000 that popped up, and the rest of them went away. And these were the 4 green properties in College Station. And then one of them was really close to Kyle Field, where they play football. And I looked at it and it said this enormous cash on cash return. I think it showed like above 50% cash on cash return. And I showed Amanda, my wife, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, is College Station this awesome? And I showed it. She was like, honestly, this could be really interesting. So we factored in some capital expenses because we hired Summerled to really go build that thing out. And basically it said we could be netting cash flow like 50 grand a year after all of our financing and expenses and interest rate being at like 7.75%, still netting 50 grand a year. So that's the power of this app. Is I would have never even looked in College Station in the first place. Second of all, I would have never found this property if it weren't for the app to like reveal it to me.
Were you skeptical when you saw that cash on cash number? Like, I feel like I'd be like, this sounds too good to be true.
Oh, I mean, it's just, I was like, there's no way. But then when we got into it further and just really dove into the data, we realized, well, there's limited hotels in College Station. College Station is like, I mean, you know it. Like, I love the Maggies because my wife is one, but they drink the Kool-Aid. And so, like, everyone's going back there, alumni. And so it makes sense. Like, it's a very high demand area with not a whole lot of good accommodations. And there's honestly not that many good Airbnbs. So on the comps dashboard, the other product, we were looking at the comps, kind of like the thing we were doing with you. All the comps we looked at were not awesome. They were like very basic, okay furnished. Maybe some of them had some pools, a lot of just A&M pillows and like flags. And we're like, oh my gosh, if we go hire Summerled and deck this thing out, like we could for sure be the top 90th percentile of this market and be at least a part of the top 10%. And if we get a part of the top 10%, we could take our revenue from, call it 70 grand in annual revenue average up to 110 to 120 grand in revenue. So almost double what you could make if you're average. And that's what we're on track for.
So you just need them to be on the path for a national championship, and then you're really off to the races.
So when I used to not support the Aggies, I am a proud supporter of the Aggies now.
Now the Aggies are supporting you.
Aggies are supporting me, so I support them. Thank you, Aggies.
Oh, that's too funny.
It really has opened my eyes. These college towns are kind of interesting, and I'm, not that they're the only place I'm going to buy, but if you're a listener out there and you're wanting to get into this investing game, college towns are kind of interesting because usually the prices are a little cheaper than you would see in like these bigger vacation markets. They're more affordable, but the revenues are still pretty attractive. The key thing to realize about that is you make most of your money during football season and some of these major events like graduations, and then you get a little bit of your revenue throughout the rest of the year. So you've got to really capitalize on those major events like UT-A&M. We made $12,000 in one weekend.
So, that sounds like a derby weekend for us.
Yeah. So you've got to capitalize on those high demand weekends.
So I know you mentioned Summerled a couple of times, and I don't think I've ever mentioned Summerled on the podcast. So I know what they do. They specialize in experiential design, but I would love for you to, I know we're kind of veering off a little bit from strIQ, but it all kind of plays into the same vein, and that design that they helped you bring to life is what attracts or makes those numbers possible. So can you give a little bit of insight into what Summerled does and how it was working with them?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I'm happy to hype them up and Funkit Interiors as well, because I'm doing another project with them in Houston. I used to be kind of concerned about paying a virtual design fee or like full installation fee. But now every single project I do in the future, I don't know if I see a situation where I wouldn't do it. And the reason why is because, first of all, if you have the right design, like College Station as an example, AirDNA or some of these other revenue providers will say, hey, your house can make 70 grand as an example. But we saw through the data at the conference, we could actually get closer to 120 or 130,000 if you had the right design, amenities, all those things. And so why would I not want to pay $10,000 for virtual design if I could increase my revenue by like, what is that, $50,000 per year? So that's the power of design, is the ROI you experience on it is astronomical. And so if you're a listener, listen to this, like for sure, take the time to invest in the right design because it will just be extremely helpful. And then the second piece of that is the installation. my wife and I, we've had to do, and I'm sure you've had to do this too. We've had to do installs on some of our houses like Seaside and Fredericksburg. And I'll never forget having my two kids, a 2 and 4 year old, having to remodel a condo in Seaside, moving around. It was like the most painful process ever. So having someone go in there and just literally do it all is amazing. And so that's why I just loved working with SummerLed for the College Station House, because they designed everything for me. We just got to like give them some inspiration. And literally, as soon as the tenant moved out in June of 2024, they were able to like get a SWAT team in there, essentially fully make it over and get it up and running with pictures in like 3 weeks, just in time for football season. I mean, it was, so we did the design part like a couple months in advance. But when the time was right, when the tenants moved out, we transformed that property in like 3 weeks.
6 years ago, I opened the door to my first guest on Airbnb. I didn't know then just how much it would change our lives. Since then, I've hosted hundreds of guests, welcomed people from all over the world across multiple states, and maintained Superhost status every single quarter. But more than the 5-star reviews, it's what this extra income has allowed us to do. Family trips, breathing room in our finances, and the freedom to build a life on our terms. Hosting on Airbnb has created a steady revenue stream that fits into our schedule and our lives. Whether it's a single-family home, a guest house that you rarely use, or even a room in your home, Airbnb helps you turn that space into opportunity. If you've been thinking about entering the world of Airbnbs or short-term rentals, I would love to chat. My DMs are always open, but if you're ready to host, you can use my link to get started. You can find it in today's show notes, or you can go to www.brandandmarket.co/Airbnb for more information. Happy hosting! And one thing that I love about SummerLed is that they speak directly to my branding heart, because the thought behind it, the strategy behind it is all based off of who that ideal guest is supposed to be. And when we were at Level Up Your Listing, I went to their like the early morning, I don't remember exactly what it was called, but it was like a little mini course. They like led you through exactly how to identify who that ideal guest was going to be. And then from there, they used that as a foundation to create that experiential design. And essentially what the purpose of the experiential design is so that you can provide them not just a place to stay, not just a place to put their head, but an experience in and of itself of being at the Airbnb. And I think a lot of times people are a little bit skeptical about going into the short-term rental industry because they don't know how to differentiate themselves, but it is very easy to differentiate yourself when you bring in some sort of like design person, specifically experiential design like SummerLed or Funkit Interiors.
That's what we're trying to do. And we're actually doing quite a bit of partnerships with SummerLed and Funkit, to where we can have the data and the design experts kind of come together for a holistic experience and value add to the customer. Because now if the customer can come in and see all the data and then be able to talk with these experts and just literally see what their comps are doing, now all you as the investor has to do in that market is just do what those comps are doing at that same level or better. And then you could expect the same amount of revenue or better. And so that's exactly how you can get to the 75th percentile or the 90th or even higher, by just doing what those comps are doing or better, and you'll probably beat them.
Yeah. So you already talked about the acquisition side of the app. And when I explain it to people, I say it's like split into two. It's acquisitions over here and optimization over here. So we've already kind of talked about a little bit about the optimization portion of it. And you've mentioned the percentiles a couple times. But can we dive a little bit more into what it actually looks like when you go to input your property and what the results are that you can expect to have back?
Yeah. So we had a customer or a girl come talk to us at Level Up Your Listing, separate from the conversation we had with you. She had the coolest house with like this ship playground for these kids. Do you remember that?
Was it in Oklahoma?
I think it was in Oklahoma. Maybe it was Broken Bow.
Yeah, I think it was, because I was like, Broken Bow, Oklahoma. I didn't know anything about that. And apparently it is a huge short-term rental spot.
Oh, yeah. And it was like a 5 or 6 bedroom home, huge house, tons of potential. And it had this like ship playground for kids. And this girl came over to us and she was like, hey, we just bought it. I'd like to see how I can optimize my property and get it to the highest revenue. I said, okay, well, let's look at the data. So we inputted the address into the dashboard, and this thing's on the web. And so we pulled it up, saw all the comps. There was like 200 comps in that area. I said, okay, well, how many bedrooms is it? She said 5, I think. And just kind of went through it. We cleaned up the data, got out the data that was not good. So anything that had less than 20 reviews, less than 4 stars, properties that hadn't been on the market, at least 275 days. So we scraped out the bad data, and then we showed only the good stuff. And I think there was probably 50 comps that was left. So then what we did is we saw it on the map where all of the comps were. And at the bottom right, it shows the revenue ranges. So I can't remember the exact numbers, but say the average revenue is $100,000. Well, it would say the 75th percentile would be 150,000. And then maybe the 90th percentile would be 180,000. And maybe the top 1% is making 200,000 or more. And I said, okay, well, let me guess what you're making. And she pulled up her link to me, and I guessed it. I said, I bet you're making probably close to 100 to 115,000 bucks. So kind of in that 50, 60% percentile range. And she goes, yeah, you're like dead on. And I was like, awesome. Well, the data was the one that was really told me, and I could kind of guess where it was because I saw her listing, and I just had some assumptions based on just my understanding of this market and your property. And she said, well, dang, so what the data is saying is I can make like an extra $40, $50, $60,000 per year. And I said, yes. I mean, the data is clearly showing it. Let's go look at your comps. So then what we did is we filtered by the top comps down, and I started showing her all the Airbnb links and the listings so that she could reference those compared to hers. And what we realized, some key findings, usually number one is most people don't have enough head count added to their listing. So if she's 5 bedrooms, she probably could have had like 15 people in that property, and she may have only had like 11 listed on her Airbnb link. So one quick, easy way to make more money is trying to figure out how to get more people on your listing. And that's a free thing you can do today to increase your revenue. So that was number one. Number two.
And just for thorough questioning purposes, does that mean that I'm actually adding beds to my house?
Sometimes. It could be like a couch bed. It could just be some people forgetting to add head count.
Right. Just not doing the math correctly.
Not doing the math right, and it's just, I've seen it. I've had so many calls, I cannot even tell you. People just don't do that. So that's one thing. Make sure you maximize head count. The other things I noticed on the top listings, there's a few things that are usually there. One, they really showcase the experience, like you said it earlier, and they do that within the first 5 pictures. So oftentimes there's like lifestyle models, there's really cool string lights, there's water features, there's beautiful professional photography, there's like the wow shots. So always in like every market, the top listings will like always have those. A great design, all that stuff. And then so when you compared that to her listing, one thing we saw was the photos were not as good as what they could have been. The first 5 photos were more like kind of random interior photos versus like that like wow shot of the outside. And I just was like, hey, and I can't remember her name. And I was like, hey, if you basically just do better professional photos, probably go get a little bit better design, just touch it up a little bit, have some lifestyle models out there with like a family and kids and taking some fun pictures, showcasing that experience. And one of the major wow factors she had was that ship playground in the front. I was like, if you put some kids out there playing on that with their families and showcase it as like a wow shot on like the first picture or two, like tons of people would love that property. So basically by just doing a few things that probably wouldn't cost that much more, string lights, maybe a hot tub for a water feature, she could increase her revenue by like 60 grand a year.
Crazy. Like I'm thinking like fire pit with like marshmallows and kids roasting like s'mores on,
Yes. I mean, anything that's unique, fun, and different that will showcase an incredible experience.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, I would actually love to hear from you, like talking about branding and experience, like what are you kind of seeing now from experiences that people are doing with a lot of these properties that are helping them increase their ROI?
Do you mean in terms of like experiences that take place at the house or in the town that they're in, or all of the above?
At the specific property.
At the specific property. Well, I think I'm going to take a feather from Summerled's cap. I have seen people bringing outside attractions into the home, and that usually shows up as extra added amenities. And again, it depends on who your ideal guest person, like avatar is. So if it is kids, then having some sort of, that playground ship, bringing them, keeping them there and not having them leave the property to go to the park, having as much stuff at the property as possible is what's going to not only keep them there longer, but also have them refer you and your property to their friends. Like I think another one that Summerled did at the house in Scottsdale, right? That's where you guys did the VIP party. One of their big trends now is to bring in the like karaoke bar, like a karaoke session. And so especially with, if you're like, let's say your ideal client avatar is your like a bachelorette party, a lot of like 25-year-old females, right? Then keeping them on property to do all of those things that they would normally go out to the bars and do, then why wouldn't they continue to spread the word organically? And then one of the other things that I really love in terms of branding is giving your property a name and really bringing it to life by giving it a little bit of personality. One thing that I absolutely love is having some sort of theme throughout the house. And then if you really want to take it to the next level, having a customized mural that is able to be Instagrammable. Anything that's going to be able to like heighten that word of mouth. Being on social media is a great way to, get that word out about your property. But just to like kind of give you an example of themes for an entire property that continues to develop the brand past just the property name. The property in Kentucky, we call that property the Commonwealth. And the reason that we call that property the Commonwealth is it is in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. The state of Kentucky is a Commonwealth. We're originally from Virginia. My husband and I are. And that is also a a state that is a Commonwealth. There are 4 of them actually in the United States: Virginia, Kentucky, Pennsylvania, and Massachusetts. And although we do have 5 bedrooms, the 4 that have the ensuite bathrooms, those are all themed after the different 4 Commonwealth states. The wall colors, for example, Pennsylvania, known for its iron. It's a raw iron bed in that room. Like I'm just bringing like inspiration from each of those individual states to make it feel like a full experience, despite where in the house they are, to make it really cohesive. So I love when that brand is through the design, through the name, through the marketing. It just makes me happy when everything just matches together perfectly.
Well, and this is probably a conversation that's for another time, but I'll say a little bit now. You've seen, is it Isaac French? Is that his last name? That the Live Oak Lake and Waco, and really, I talked to the broker that sold that property for him. Just talking about the
sold it when he was exiting.
Yeah, when Isaac was selling it, and if you think about it, I mean, he kind of created this out of nothing. I mean, it really just takes just some ideas and vision and branding to really create this. And because of the brand that he created enormous market value, millions of dollars worth of value because of the brand behind it, and then became really just massive on social media. So I think the one missing link that I've been facing as an investor, and I probably want to talk to you about this a little bit more later on, is, I've got my property set up on, different Instagram accounts and stuff, but I really haven't been leveraging social media yet to help drive even more revenue. That's like the one missing link I feel like I'm facing, but it's kind of just out of my, wheelhouse. So it sounds like that's right up your alley. I might need to talk to you about that later on and to figure out, we've come up with cool names like the Field House for College Station, more of like a sports theme, 30A Getaway for Seaside. So there's like some fun things, but I really haven't probably leveraged the brand as much as I should. So that's something we'll hear more from you about at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. And just a quick little tidbit. This is kind of how I view it. So I come from like the online space, online business ownership space, and everyone's always preaching, social media is great to build an audience, but you really want to push people off social media onto an email list because you own that email list. I would say that it's very similar when it comes to the OTAs like Airbnb, VRBO. Like that's a good place to start getting your name out. But that's not the end all be all. Like I would, in my ideal world, I would capture those emails through StayFi or something like that, and then push them to a direct booking site. So if slash when they come back to you, you're not paying all of those upfront costs that Airbnb charges. And then you also have a way to connect with them after their stay. So that's a one, I wouldn't say necessarily simple, but very tangible tip that you could take to push that brand a little bit further. Okay, so my last two questions for you. First one is going to be, what is on the horizon for strIQ? Is there anything new coming to the app anytime soon, or are we not allowed to know yet?
Oh, no. I mean, we could definitely tell you what's on the horizon. So remember that story I told you earlier about when someone was looking for knowledge, they would used to go to the books or people, then Google came along, and then now you could go Google anything. But now what's happened is AI has come along. And so you could go to Claude or Grok and basically ask that AI whatever question you want, and it give you answers in like seconds. Well, imagine that with short-term rentals with our acquisition app, where we leverage AI, we leverage data, and you've got this AI agent or AI assistant that basically goes scrubs the entire US in seconds, find all these for sale properties, all the revenue potential, 50th, 75th percentile, the 90th percentile, underwrite millions of properties in seconds, and then spit out the best properties for you to consider, leveraging AI. That's where they're going.
It almost feels like you're cheating.
Hey, but that's why you gotta have that competitive edge.
Exactly. And I vaguely remember a piece of our conversation at Level Up Your Listing that one of your co-founders has specific knowledge or expertise in AI. Is that right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I better not say his name.
Oh,
We'll just call it Mysterious Man for now.
okay.
No, my co-founder, yeah, his background is AI with his current company. So he's still there, which is why I don't want to say the name. But he is very much leading our AI efforts here. And here's another vision of where we're going. So that's on the acquisition app. But the other piece of it with our dashboard has been, so imagine you find a property, you type in the address. So this is where you're kind of diving in a little bit further. Well, now AI can go in and look at all the pictures of that property on the MLS, and it can look at all the pictures of the comparable Airbnb listings and all the reviews. And in seconds, be able to tell you, hey, based on this market, this specific type of person that might be booking your place, you should consider upgrading your countertops for $5,000. You should consider updating your bathrooms for $8,000 and adding a hot tub for $4,000 and adding string lights for couple $100, doing lifestyle photos, arranging it in this. And this way you could make 120,000 in projected revenue. So basically looking at all these pictures, scanning everything and all the reviews and all the details, and just spoon feeding you the answers.
I cannot even imagine that. Like I said, it feels like it's cheating. It's so easy.
That's where we're going. So, I mean, it's funny because it feels like that's far away, but we've actually already built it. We just haven't released it yet. So it's coming and it's slowly going to be rolled out. But there's certain things we got to do at certain steps. But it's here. And it should be rolled out soonish. So I'm excited.
Incredible. If you guys are not already on the strIQ app, you need to be. We will link it in the show notes. And that leads me to my final question, Matt, is what is your number one piece of advice for our listeners to become the best in their brand and their market?
Ooh.
And you can take it anywhere you want. You can take it anywhere you want.
Well, there's a lot of things. I think for me, the biggest thing I see, and probably the same with you, is fear holds a lot of people back. It holds people back from their first property. It holds people back from investing that $10,000 in virtual design because that sounds like it's expensive. It holds people back from maybe hiring you to help with marketing. It just fears like, I'm going to spend this money. What if I lose it all? What if a tornado hits my house? Like all these what ifs. I face the same thing. And so I think my biggest piece of advice is like, look, you're going to experience enormous fear. But that's why data and experts and those things are great to have, because if you can just trust the data and trust the experts. It'll help you come over your fears and do what you know you need to do. And you will most likely see the results that you're hoping to achieve. But, risk and return, sometimes you've got to take risks to get that return. Otherwise, if you take really, really low risk, you may not get the returns that you're hoping for. And so, I've talked to many designers and groups out there. Like, a lot of people want to be cheap with their properties, but you probably will get cheap results too. And so, again, my recommendation would be, hey, don't let fear hold you back. Sometimes you got to take some risk to invest in that property. And if you do it, and if you do it right, you're probably going to really like the results.
Absolutely. If you do it right. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time, Matt. I really appreciate it. If you haven't already downloaded the strIQ app, please go ahead and do it because it has changed our outlook as we are trying to build our portfolio here in the Haney house. So, Matt, where can people reach you and access the strIQ app?
Awesome. Well, you can reach out, strIQ.com, or you can reach out to me via email, matt.sanderson@strIQ.com. And I know we didn't talk about this, but I'll just do it for fun now. If people want to download the app, try it out, you get a 7-day free trial immediately. And then if they use the code ALI20, ALI20, then they can get 20% off if they decide to subscribe.
Oh my gosh, that's such a fun surprise. I didn't know you were going to throw that at me. Thank you.
There, it'll be fun. But yeah, would love to offer that to anyone that wants to try it out, and they can reach out for an onboarding call with me and I'll help walk them through the technology.
Awesome. We will link all of that in the show notes so that you guys know exactly where to go. And thank you so much. Here's to being the best in your brand and your market. Signing off until next week. You just completed another episode of the Brand and Market Podcast. If you found this helpful, please rate, review, and subscribe to help others find this show and so that you never miss an episode. Don't forget to take a look at the show notes for all the resources mentioned today. See you next Wednesday, and as always, I'm here cheering you on as you build your dream brand and business.